had you on last time, I barely went over your credentials, and you sent me a list of them, and it's pretty impressive. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, let's get on to the subject of radiation throughout the country, Fukushima, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a background in your education and your experience?
Well, I worked in ophthalmology for 24 years, and I was on the board of directors for the Ophthalmic Photographer Society. Unfortunately, I had to drop out of that position when I hurt my back, and I'm currently on medical leave for that. But I've been a medical review editor for a scientific journal. I've written and published several papers. I have NIH credentialing for scientific studies, and I was contributing data in ophthalmology to 28 different clinical studies with my last position. So I do know the process, and it takes time to get a lot of this data together, and there's a lot of researchers working on this Fukushima thing right now, but a few things were presented at a conference last weekend which was big news, and one of them was that plutonium from Fukushima was detected in Boston in soil samples, and originally when the meltdowns happened, they said plutonium will never fly even to the west coast. It's too heavy, it can't stay up in the air, it'll end up in the ocean, and the ocean will take care of it. Well, it's not only, it went to Boston, but I mean, they detected it in Europe too, so it's falling all over the globe. Right. And the other thing that came out, which is my biggest fear, is the cesium. The soil samples that they've been receiving from people sending them in all over the country are indicating that cesium is over here in large quantities. And you can get an idea if there's cesium dispersion in your area by how your pine trees look, because pine trees uptake cesium in soil. It mimics potassium, and pine trees are potassium hogs. So if you start seeing your pine trees dying and turning red, that could be because you have cesium in your soil. You know that it's over here now in big quantities.
The problem we have here in the West with that, and I remember you were talking about that last time you were on, is we've had the West and in Western United States and in Canada, Southern Canada. I don't know how far north it goes, but we've had this bark pine beetle infestation for the last decade, and in the region I live in Montana, there's literally hundreds of thousands of acres that are red, and have been red in one state or another, either red or all the needles have sloughed and they're just gray for years. So I can't use that test. So maybe I want to rely on some of the government agencies, the EPA, for example. So can I rely on them going to their websites where they're supposed to monitor radiation levels around this country? What happens when I go look at those in that data, Christina?
Well, when you go look at the data of the testing that they did in dairy products and in water and soil, they showed that there were levels detected all over, but then they stopped the testing at the end of March. And they said the levels aren't high enough to worry about. But each one of those levels are geared towards a one-time, sometimes yearly or lifetime exposure of the material. They're not taking into consideration if this is coming at you, from air, food, and water. Those are cumulative levels. There's actually whole new tables that need to be calculated. So they're going off this assumption this is like a one-time thing you might come across in your water, and because it's at this level, then it's okay. It's not harmful. But the air testing that they're doing, which is online, and it's something that they have to deal with a Cold War thing that was established by the Atomic Energy Commission, that they would be testing our air forever because of all the nuke testing that was done in the 60s.
Right. And
that's how we're able to compare that data. Well, some of the researchers have access. I don't have access to it, but to the levels that were in 2010 compared to the levels now, and they're much higher. And either it's coming from Fukushima or it's coming from other sources. And had a few people email me saying that they think some of the plants in this country might be careless with their releases to the air and water now because they know that Fukushima's a cover for this. unless
can use.
people
Well,
start blowing the
let's get
whistle
into.
from inside this industry, you know, it's going to be really hard to determine that. By the time we do, then people are already getting sick. So
Yeah, and I want to get into that, but I kind of want to save that towards the latter half of the program because I have a lot of questions. You know, I mean, there has been, and a coworker at my day job can even attest to this. There's just been a rash of nonstop illnesses going from summer into fall. You know, way beyond the typical. Even myself, I've been having respiratory issues for going on the last month or so, and I want to get into some of those questions. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about what has happened in Fukushima since the last time you were on this program just a few weeks ago. Lots. And let me start. This is information that Christina had sent to me prior to the program, but let me just kind of guide you and get you. Let's talk about the reactors. You know, we've had a couple of reactors blow. Get into that.
Well, Reactor 2 blew a huge hole in its side about a week and a half ago, and some people on YouTube have been putting up videos about it. There's been no mention from Tepco or from the NRC or anyone who's supposed to be monitoring what's going on over there, how this happened. Either there was an explosive event that occurred from the broken reactor vessels, or it came from the spent fuel pool, or there's some kind of structural collapse going on with building number 2. And around the same time that this hole was noticed, and I have videos of it on my YouTube also, there were some large releases detected of several different types of gases that are released during criticality, when plutonium and uranium is fissioning. And this is krypton and xenon gas and iodine. It was picked up around the planet. It was picked up in Japan, and people have been picking it up over here too, that are researching this. And Tepco at first said, we don't know what's going on. We need help from the Japanese government. So we can account for where this is coming from. And then the next day they said, oh, you know what? There's no problem. And that's where they've left it. The word no criticality.
So they had this large release of different gases. And guys, keep in mind, this is since Christina was on 2 weeks ago. We've had this large release of gases, a hole blown in the side of the reactor. You also put in here that there's video of strange flashes and colored lights continue at the reactor site. So there's obviously some kind of nuclear reaction going on.
Yeah, but in the open air above the reactor, there's red and orange and green and blue and purple lights that are flashing. And that's evidence of criticality that's happening in the open air. I mean, it's just insane.
So Tepco came and asked
8 months later, and it's nothing is being contained. If anything, it looks like it's getting worse from what we can tell.
And Tepco came out and asked the government for help. Tepco came out and asked the government. Tepco in Japan asked the Japanese government for help, and then retracted it. A day later?
And then, the next day they retracted it and said that they determined there was no criticality. And there's been some German researchers and Christopher Busby, who I've talked about before, who said that the only thing that would have created such enormous releases is a critical event that happened with uranium. So there was, and it probably happened about 50 hours before those gases were even detected. So by that time it's on its way over here. It only takes 3 days to reach the West Coast. 4 days to reach
What is the official story? You know what? Hold on. We got the music playing in my ears. I want to get a little bit more into this. I want to know what the official government line is. Not Christina, who is our resident, I guess, now expert on Fukushima, the fallout, what's happening here in the country. A lot of people ask in there, what's her website? I don't know if you have a website, but I do know you have a YouTube channel. Why don't you, iChica ×4. I got that right?
Yep.
iChica ×4. I'll put that link into the chat room here in a minute. And I see you have our last interview up there, so thanks for rebroadcasting that. Do you have a website as well, Christina?
No, I have a page on Facebook where I post articles and mitigation tips daily. Rad Chick, Radiation Research and Mitigation.
I'm laughing right after that. I love your names. Rad Chick, which I get the pun there. rad, and chick, and then so that's awesome. Yeah. And then
There's a
iChica,
link
let's
to
explain
that
that
on
real quick.
YouTube.
What's that?
There's a link to that on the YouTube channel too.
Okay. And the iChica times 4, I think you explained this last time, you've been in the eye business for a long time. Your daughters call you Chica, and you got 4 of them, so times 4. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, well, good deal. All right.
Yeah, and it's been verified that the Emperor of Japan has been hospitalized for some immune problems and extreme fatigue. He visited the Fukushima prefecture in April to show his support for the workers at the plant, and the Empress, his wife, I don't know if she's still hospitalized, but she's been suffering from some extreme pains in her arms and legs, and their 9-year-old granddaughter, the princess, she's sick in the hospital too with pneumonia, and all of them have been eating produce from Fukushima. There was also a newscaster in Japan. I don't recall his name at the moment, but he's been eating the produce on air to show his support and to show that it's safe. And a week and a half ago, he discovered a tumor in his neck, which is cancerous, and now he's in the hospital too, getting ready to start chemo.
Unreal. So, and none of this makes it here. I mean, we don't hear any of this news. You
really have to dig for it to get it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we have too much other, exciting things going on here. We got Lindsay Lohan that's, Jump Veil or whatever she's done lately, or whatever the next Gladiator event is. Who cares about Fukushima? That's ancient history. I had another question from a regular listener on congenitive disease. Has there been? I mean, could this cause congenitive issues? Has there been anything reported, an uptick in it, anything like that?
Well, there's reports of mutations in animals that are occurring in Japan and on the West Coast, and I documented on my channel some mutations that I've observed here in the ducks behind my house and in oak tree saplings. And I'm in southeast Michigan. So, there are reports too. You can find a lot of them. There's actually Any News has a forum just for posting observations about mutations.
Okay.
And the things that are breeding more quickly and have a shorter cycles of pregnancy, small animals and cats and things like that, and rabbits, it's going to show up in those things faster, and it's going to show up in people. And Japan has put a lid on any kind of information about the babies being born over there, but there's hospital workers that are tweeting that there's been a huge increase in birth defects. But again,
hasn't even the infant mortality rate spiked here since Fukushima?
The mortality rate has spiked here. It's gone up 40% in infants under 12 months, and also in maternal death. That's where the mother and the baby both die, and that's also been mentioned recently on the East Coast and in Philadelphia. And what's interesting about Philadelphia is that they have had the highest level of contamination in their water supply out of all the cities in the U.S., and they're showing a 40% increase in infant mortality as well.
So we have the crisis. Not only what is the official line from the Japanese government on what is occurring right now at Fukushima? I mean, it isn't in the news here, so we don't hear about it.
Their official line is that they're trying to put the reactors into a cold shutdown by the end of this year. But, I mean, that's assuming that the stuff that was in the reactors is still in them, which we know it's not because they were all cracked from the earthquake. The corium, everything that's leaked out of there is in the ground under the plant at this point. And there's been some estimations from steam releases and from radiation readings over here that it may have even hit groundwater as far back as June. And what happens when it hits groundwater, it starts fissioning more because you've got 3,000 degree material now hitting cold water. And there is a much bigger concern than about another